did not expect to get emotional in this video, but there we go. 3 months ago, I lost my dad to cancer. I feel like I'm just about ready to talk through my experience in the hope that someone else out there might take something from it, or it might help someone either now or in the future, because it's not a nice thing to go through, but inevitably everyone loses their parents at some point, some younger than others. Also, although I've told a lot of my friends about it, I've never really sort of go into all the details, so I feel like it might even be somewhat therapeutic for me to be able to do that as well. This isn't my usual kind of video, by the way, so bear with me, but I feel like I needed to share this. I also wanted to quickly let you know that I'm going to be walking around London in my underwear to raise money for Stand Up to Cancer. So do please click the link in the description down below to find out more about that and to get involved. And I'll be talking through a little bit more about that at the end of this video as well. So less than 3 years ago, my dad, Tom, was diagnosed with renal cancer, which is cancer in his kidney. And by the time they'd actually caught it, it actually spread to his lung and outside his kidney. At first he went to the hospital thinking it might have been kidney stones, but within a few days he'd found out. And I remember he came into my room, I was sitting at my desk on my computer, I remember it very well, and he sat down on my sofa and just told me that he had cancer. In a very calm way. He was not sort of sad or in shock, or at least wouldn't show it, as dads often don't. They like to hide their emotions deep down, I imagine. But he was very calm, and I remember him saying that he didn't feel that he'd changed as a person. He was still the same person as he was a few months ago, but he just had this horrible thing inside him that had actually probably been there for quite a few years already. I guess from the get-go, I was pretty optimistic. You like to think that the bad stuff's never gonna happen to you, so I guess in my mind I was always thinking, oh, he's probably gonna be fine. Okay, might live not quite as long as he would have done, but hopefully he'll be fine. And that was kind of my mindset for a long time. It's quite hard to accept that your dad would potentially be passing away in the not too distant future. So from the beginning, I was optimistic that we'd be fine. He'd be fine. Now, the tricky thing about renal cancer, the kind that he had, is that you can't treat it in the same way that you can most cancers, which is like through the regular chemotherapy and radiation treatments. Now, fortunately, there were some new drugs around that had actually only been around, I think, a few years. So had this been earlier on, it would have been a lot worse. So he went onto this drug. It did help. It did shrink the cancers bit by bit, enough so that I think about 9 months later, he went in for an operation to basically take his kidney out and to remove as much, if not all, of the cancer as possible from inside. A massive operation. He had a scar like down here, and it took months and months of recovery. But unfortunately, it found out that they didn't end up removing all of the cancer. They got most of it, but there was some left. So basically, that started to regrow. The drugs were still somewhat effective for a while, but they do only have a certain amount of time that they work for, which is usually a year or two, this particular drug. And actually, he was lucky that it went on working a little bit longer before he then, at the beginning of this year, switched to another drug, which unfortunately had worse side effects and didn't really work that well. So throughout this year, he was beginning to deteriorate, even though gradually it was getting worse and worse, and he actually got to a point where he was in bed all day. For some reason, I so foolishly thought that he would get better. I think my brother was the same. My brother's a few years older than me. It was just easier to hope that things would get better. But unfortunately, they didn't. And then on the 27th of May at 4:30, my mum called me. I know that because I just got to Top Man, of all places, as I had a personal shopping session booked in. And as soon as I got there and sat down, my mum called me. And it was one of those phone calls that you almost immediately know something's bad and something's not right. And so my mum told me that basically they'd seen the cancer specialist that was treating him for the past few years, and they decided that the drug wasn't working and that they were going to take him off the drug, and that there was no other alternate options available. So by this point he was very weak as well, so basically they knew that he didn't really have much longer left. I think one of the nurses in the hospital had said that it could be anything from a few days to a few weeks. So suddenly I went from Mr. Optimistic, my dad's going to get through this and going to be fine, to suddenly I'm hearing the news that he's not going to be around any longer than a few weeks. And I got this news in the middle of Topshop, and that was not great. So I went home on the tube immediately. I just remember like being so dazed as I was going home. It was a really weird feeling. I remember like being, it sounds so horrible to say, but like near the edge of the railway platform and almost not trusting myself, just because I was in such a weird mental state. So I would like sort of just not go anywhere near the edge of the railway platform. It sounds so silly, but I didn't even trust myself because this was such a shock to hear it. So I got home and was just so upset, just cried for probably a good hour or so, just sitting in my bed. Thankfully my housemate wasn't in, and then I think I went home that evening or the next day, and so for the next couple of weeks really I was pretty much at home. My dad went into hospice a couple of days later, and a hospice, if you don't know, is basically where you go when you know you're gonna die. So for the next few weeks he was there, and I'd visit him I think almost every day. I still tried to sort of keep a relatively somewhat normal life at the same time, so did film a video at one point, and then went to like a couple of events back in London just to try and I guess keep my mind off of things. But then he gradually got worse and worse whilst he was at the hospice for those few weeks. And then on June 12th, on the Sunday, I'd just come back home from London. I'd literally just got to my parents' house, and then my mum called me. The hospice was 5 minutes away. I was like, come here now. So I did. I've never driven so fast in my life. My brother had just gone back to Dubai that very morning. He lives in Dubai. So it was just me and my mum there by his bedside. The nurses kind of know when someone's about to die generally, when they're sort of just deteriorating. So he was not conscious, but he was still breathing, and you could tell that he was about to pass. So my mum and I was just standing there holding his hand, and gradually the breaths just slowed down, and then he took his last one. I remember watching his heart through his sort of t-shirt because you could see it beating, and just gradually it slowed down and then stopped, and he was gone. I'm glad I was there at the end because it was almost therapeutic in a way just to be there as he left this world. So it was a sad few days then. I found that the weird thing is I felt like I handled it all well, if not too well. For like a good month or two after he passed, the funeral I didn't really, didn't really shed a tear. It was more just kind of remembering the happy times, which is a good thing to do. I've actually found that the longer it's been, the more upset I've got actually. It's almost like at the beginning it wasn't weird because sometimes I wouldn't see him for a week, or if I was away at university then I might not have seen him for a few months. But in the last month or so it's got to that point where I should have seen him again. And I think that's what started to make it even harder, is that I miss him more because I should have seen him again by now, and I haven't. And the grief kind of just hits you in waves. You don't know when it's coming. Actually, usually it is for me at night time when I'm trying to get to sleep, because that's when I have time to think about stuff. And last week, there was one night in particular that I just couldn't get to sleep and just thought about it more and more, and then I just got more and more upset and then couldn't get to sleep even more, and a bit of a vicious cycle there. Even got to the point where I'm not religious, but I was speaking to him out loud just in case, just in case his spirit is around. And I guess that's, maybe that's a bit sad, a bit desperate, but maybe that helped. I don't know. It's really not an easy thing to deal with, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone, not even my worst enemy. It still feels so weird, so unreal. Doesn't feel like it's happened. Just the fact that our family of 4 is now a family of 3 is just weird to think about. Weirder now than it was when it first happened, which I can't explain, but as I say, I don't think there's any set way of these things happening and dealing with them, and I wish he was still here. Did not expect to get emotional in this video, but there we go. So on a happier note, that is why I'm supporting Stand Up to Cancer. It is something that means so much to me. Cancer is such a horrible thing. 1 in 2 people are affected by it at some point in their lives. So I decided to do something silly and fun and walk around London in my underwear. That's happening next week if you're watching this when it first comes out. I would love it if you could support me and get involved. The way that it will work is every £5 that is donated, I will walk 1 minute in my underwear in London. So for example, if in this next week £500 gets donated, I will walk for 100 minutes around London in my underwear. So the more you donate, the more I will have to walk pretty much naked. So it would be great if you could donate. Click on the link down below in the description to find out more and to find the links to donate. Anything you can give would be great. £5, awesome. That will get me walking for a minute. But if you can afford more, I would appreciate that too. I'm going to be doing it on Thursday, the 29th of September, so next Thursday. I'm going to be filming the whole thing for a video, so that will be out in a couple of weeks as well. And I will even live stream some bits on Facebook, so you should probably follow my Facebook page if you want to actually sort of be there with me at the time. This whole thing means a lot to me, so I really appreciate you guys' support. It's not often I ask for stuff. I think this is a good enough reason to be asking you guys to help. So please support the cause. It will mean a lot to me. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye.